They once pushed me out of the family photo. I stepped back, out of the frame, giving space to the important ones. Her mother's words, not mine. My name was never in their Thanksgiving prayers. Never once mentioned when they talked about everyone who raised Jacob. I was just a shadow. In the very house I helped pay to fix the roof. And then, one afternoon in June, she came, Lisa's mother, knocking on my door with trembling hands. "Mark, only you can save my grandson. Please." She couldn't look me in the eye, just bowed her head, like it was about to fall. The boy, Jacob, had an accident. Severe blood loss. He needed an urgent transfusion. Rare blood type. No one in her family matched. Except me. Me, the nameless one. I didn't ask a thing. I just grabbed my jacket and headed for the car. The whole drive to the hospital, Lisa said nothing. Her eyes were red. Her hands clung to her shirt. I knew she was scared, not just for the boy, but because, for the first time in her life, she needed me. Really needed me. Years ago, I had a son. After my divorce, I lost custody. No more visits. No more dad. Maybe that's why, from the very first day, Jacob called me by my name. I silently called him son, though no one ever allowed it. And that day, looking through the glass into the ER, seeing that boy's cold little hand, one thought came to me. If I don't do this, there will be no one else. I didn't know that just 7 minutes later, I would hear a word I'd spent almost my entire life waiting to be called again. My name is Mark, 41 years old. I fix pipes for a living. But around here, folks call me the guy who fixes things nobody else wants to touch. I live in a small town on the edge of Ohio, a place where people remember your mistakes more than anything you've ever done right. I used to have a wife, and a little boy I loved so much, I was afraid to hold him too tight, worried he'd just vanish, like something you wake up from. Then the recession hit. I lost my job, and then I lost myself. Depression dragged me down. I walked around like a body that forgot how to live. She couldn't take it anymore, so she left, took our son with her. No screaming, no fight. Just one day, they were gone, along with a divorce paper already signed. I didn't fight for custody, because men like me, blue-collar, grease-stained, paid by the hour, no college degree, we never stand a chance in court. For a while, I used to stand outside his preschool, just to catch a glimpse of him from a distance. But then, she moved him to another school. Since that day, I've been alone, silent, work, eat by myself, cold showers, leftover rice. I call it paying for my mistakes, not to anyone else, just to myself. And then, I met Lisa. She waited tables at a diner near my place. I came in every day, not for the food, but for her eyes. Tired eyes, worn out by life, but still holding on to a little bit of hope. Lisa had a boy, Jacob, 4 years old, skinny little thing, always clutching an old picture book like it was the only thing that would never leave him. I didn't try to get close, until one day he dropped his box of crayons. I picked it up and asked, "What's your favorite color, kid?" He just looked at me, didn't answer. But the next day, he sat a little closer to my table. I started helping Lisa with little things, fixing the light bulbs, the coffee machine, leaky faucets. I never asked for anything, never asked to be paid. I just wanted to help. One rainy afternoon, she forgot to bring Jacob a raincoat. I wrapped him up in mine and walked him to the bus stop. And he looked at me and asked, "Are you my dad?" I smiled, but my chest hurt. I didn't know if I should nod or shake my head. A few weeks later, Lisa invited me over for dinner. That old apartment smelled like damp wood and cheap soap. But on the table was a hot bowl of noodles, and Jacob pulled out a chair for me. That moment, nobody called me anything, but I felt like I belonged in a family again. We never got married. Lisa was scared of commitment. I was scared of being left behind again. But little by little, I moved in. No one said a word. It just happened. I never brought flowers. I never wrote poems. I just fixed things. The roof, the front door, the old lock that kept sticking. To me, love is fixing what's broken, before it falls apart completely. For the first 3 years living with Jacob, I was never called Dad. He called me Mark, like there was an invisible wall between us. I never blamed him, because I knew love isn't in a title. But once, during a parent-teacher meeting, his teacher mistook me for his real father. I smiled, ready to correct her. Then Jacob turned, held my hand, and shook his head. I stayed quiet, because in that moment, I saw his eyes light up, like he was trying to imagine what it would feel like if it were true. I once filled out an adoption form for Jacob. Just once. I never dared to give it to Lisa. I hid it in the drawer by my bed. One night, she found it, folded it back, put it exactly where it was, said nothing, didn't sign. I understood. Some women carry wounds so deep, they can't trust anyone with their child, not even someone who truly loves him. Her family never knew. To them, I was just the guy staying over. Lisa's mother, Margaret, never once looked me in the eye. Her brother Luke once told me, "Lisa's a good woman. She deserves a better family than this." I got used to their contempt. One Thanksgiving, I sat at the very end of the table, got up to get a glass of water, and when I came back, someone else was in my seat. No one noticed. No one asked me to sit back down. So I stood at the sink and ate, not because there wasn't a chair, but because I was used to being unseen. I once lost a son, and I couldn't bear losing another family. So I stayed. Not for Lisa, not for pride. For Jacob. One time, I was teaching him to fix his old bike. He snapped the kickstand clean off. I didn't yell. I just told him, "You can mess things up, as long as you learn how to fix them." That night, Lisa hugged me from behind. The first time in months, she whispered, "You've done something not even his real dad ever did." But what keeps me here, what I can't walk away from, was the next morning when I found a cup of hot coffee and a sandwich in my truck, left there by Jacob. No note, no drawing, no words, just food and a quiet kind of care. I opened my wallet and slid in a picture I once took of him, smiling with a book in his hands. I don't carry pictures of anyone else, but in my wallet, there's only that one. I never ask him to call me Dad. I just want to be the last person he sees before he falls asleep, and the first person he sees when he wakes up. I thought I had found my place, until one afternoon, the phone rang. On the screen was a name I never expected to see. Margaret. Lisa's mother. I froze. My thumb hovered over the answer button, but I didn't press it, because I knew if she was calling me, something must have gone terribly, terribly wrong. I wasn't planning to pick up. The name on the screen said, Margaret, Lisa's mom, the woman who never once saw me as family. I almost let it ring out, but something made me answer. Her voice cracked on the very first word. "Mark, Jacob, he's had an accident. We're at St. Luke's Hospital." I didn't ask a thing. Didn't need to. The car keys were on the table. I grabbed them and drove. Rain hit the windshield in thin sheets. My heart beat out of sync with the streetlights. St. Luke's was 18 miles away, and all I could think of the whole way there was this. If that boy doesn't make it, I'd already lost one son. Not to death, but to something crueler. He grew up with no memory of me. If I lost another, I wouldn't survive it. When I got to the hospital, I found Lisa collapsed outside the ER, her hair a mess, mascara running black down her cheeks. Margaret was pacing, hands shaking, whispering prayers. Luke, her brother, stood with his arms crossed, his face pale. I walked up. No one said my name. No one said a word. But Lisa grabbed my hand. For the first time, there was no wall between us. A doctor came out. "We've done everything we can, but Jacob has lost a lot of blood. His blood type is AB-RH negative, extremely rare. No one in the family matches." Margaret stammered. "What about Lisa? She's his mother." "Not a match either," the doctor said. Anxious, frustrated. Luke snapped. "So what? You're just going to wait until he dies." Lisa dropped to the floor, sobbing into her hands. I noticed Jacob's shoes in the corner, laces still undone, like he'd just been running around moments ago. I swallowed hard, then asked quietly, "Have you tested me?" The doctor looked up, hesitating. We didn't know you were family. You're not on the records." I didn't answer, just rolled up my sleeve and placed my arm on the table. No one stopped me. No one asked why. At that moment, I didn't need to be anything, as long as my blood matched. 15 minutes later, the door opened. The doctor came back out, eyes wide, like he'd just pulled the winning ticket. "Mr. Mark, you're a perfect match. Not just the type, everything. We'll start the transfusion immediately." Lisa gripped my hand, tight. I looked at her. She nodded. Couldn't say a word. I walked into the donor room. Left arm on the chair rest. Right arm out, steady, as the nurse slid in the needle. Blood started to flow. From me, to a boy who had never called me Dad, but who hugged me every morning from behind, laughing that soft little laugh. I closed my eyes and thought about my own son. Where was he now? If he got hurt, would anyone even tell me? No. But Jacob had me, and I was here. When it was over, I stepped out, a little dizzy, but lighter. I was about to sit down when Margaret walked up and stopped in front of me. She didn't speak, and her eyes, they weren't thankful. Cold, hesitant, almost afraid. I asked, "Is something wrong?" She pressed her lips tight, looked at me, then turned to Lisa. "Did you tell him?" Lisa lowered her head. Her hands clenched together. I tightened my grip on my jacket strap, and a thought came over me, like a warning I should have heard long ago. "There's something they haven't told me." I looked at Lisa. She wouldn't look back. Her head down, fingers twisted tight, like she was holding everything in place, trying to keep it all from falling apart. "Say it, Lisa," Margaret pushed. No pride this time, only fear and frustration. I stood there, and suddenly the air between us turned cloudy, like frosted glass. I didn't hear the first words out of Lisa's mouth, just saw her lips move, her voice barely a whisper. "I wasn't sure until yesterday, when the doctor said Jacob's blood type. I remembered you couldn't have that match if you were just someone else." She looked at me, her eyes full of apology and fear. "I think you might be Jacob's biological father." Those words dropped into me, like a stone thrown into still water. The surface shattered, and my chest went cold. "No, you told me. He was the son of the man who left you." Lisa nodded, slowly. "I believed that. But the truth is, he and I had already broken up before then, and that night was the night I met you. I thought it couldn't be. I was scared I was wrong. I didn't want to tie you to something I wasn't sure of. I took a step back, like the ground just let go of me. And all these years, you never thought I deserved to know." Lisa didn't answer. She just cried. I looked over at Margaret, the woman who always called me a stranger. Now she sat in silence, her hands gripping her coat like she wanted to disappear. Luke stared out into the hallway, jaw tight. No one said a word. I didn't either. I just turned and walked out of the ER, slow. As I passed the room, I stopped. Jacob was lying there, still, a small arm wrapped in bandages, the ventilator rising and falling. I stepped inside, put my hand on his forehead. Hot. And I whispered, "You've been calling me Dad." And I never knew. In my head flashed a night when he was 5. Fever burning, mumbling in his sleep. "Dad, don't go. Please stay." Back then, I thought he meant his real dad. I stayed up all night, watching over him. Now I know. He was calling me. I left the hospital, drove with no place to go. The city smeared into rain on the glass. I passed his preschool, the ice cream shop he loved, the empty lot where I taught him to ride his bike. Every place whispered the same question. When did I become a father? And why? Did no one ever tell me? That night, I went back to the apartment. Lisa wasn't home. On the table was a folded note. "I'm sorry for keeping the truth. But one thing I know for sure, no one has ever been a better father than you." I folded it, slipped it into my wallet, right next to the picture of Jacob sleeping with the cat in his arms, the one I took when he wasn't looking. I sat down, turned on the kitchen light. The house was silent, and for the first time in years, I felt like the blood running through my veins wasn't nameless anymore. It was already in that boy, and maybe it had been there all along. But one question stayed heavy. Now that I know I'm his father, after all these years of silence, do I still deserve to be his dad? Jacob was discharged after 3 days. He was still weak, but his eyes were brighter again, and his voice lively. Every time he talked about the superhero books I used to read to him. But inside that small apartment, something had changed. Lisa talked less, and I didn't know what to say anymore. We lived together like 2 old acquaintances, once close, but now unsure where we belonged in each other's lives. The first night Jacob came home, I cooked his favorite, chicken cream spaghetti, set the table nice, even added napkins with the cartoon characters he loved. When Lisa walked Jacob into the kitchen, he shouted, "Spaghetti! Did you make it, Uncle Mark?" I nodded, but Lisa didn't smile. She stood there for a while, then whispered, "Mark, thank you." But please don't tell Jacob. Not yet. Let him live like before. I froze, not from surprise, but from the sting. You mean I have to keep living like a shadow, even when my blood is running through him? Lisa lowered her head. I'm just afraid. If he knows now, it'll confuse him. He's still recovering. I don't want to turn his world upside down. I said nothing, just kept setting the table. At dinner, I smiled, told Jacob old stories. But inside, every word felt like a thorn. 3 days later, I left work early to surprise him. Went to school to pick him up. The guard stopped me at the gate. Sorry, your name isn't on the list. I'm his dad, I said. She checked the papers, shook her head. I need a parent listed on record. I stood there, my hand tightening on the strap of my bag, watching other fathers walk out with their kids. Some waved, some knelt to tie shoelaces. I just stood, a father with no papers, no name on the form. A father waiting for permission to be a father. That night, I told Lisa, I want to be on the school records. As his legal father, Lisa sighed. Mark, this is all happening so fast. I need time. How many years, I asked, before you believe I'm his father? My voice wasn't loud, but it cracked. She was quiet for a long time, then said, you can still stay. We can still be what we were. Just don't bring the law into this. Not now, I laughed. What we were? You want me to keep living as Uncle Mark, even though I'm his dad? Lisa broke down. I'm scared. I'm scared if things change, I'll lose everything. I'm scared you'll fight me for custody. I'm scared you'll leave. I looked at her. You're scared of me. But have you ever thought, I'm even more scared. Scared of being a father, with no right to be one. Scared of watching my own son grow up from the outside. Since that night, Lisa started pulling away. She stayed later at work, talked less, and every time I stepped into Jacob's room, she watched me, measuring every step I took. I began waking up early, standing at the kitchen window. From there, I saw Lisa holding Jacob's hand, walking into the morning mist. I just stood there, didn't call out, because I knew. In their picture of a family, I still wasn't drawn in. That night, Jacob hugged me and whispered, Uncle Mark, why are you sad all the time now? I stroked his hair, forced a smile. Sometimes grown-ups are sad, because they don't know where they belong, in someone else's life. Jacob tilted his head. Then I'll draw you next to me, like in the picture I made at school. My throat tightened. That's great. Make sure you draw me right next to you. He nodded. Then why are you crying? I smiled, wiped it away. Maybe because this is the first time someone's drawn me in. 2 weeks later, the results came back. A sheet of paper. 99% biological match. Black and white. Clear. Cold. I held it in my hands. I didn't shake, but my fingers were damp. I'm not sure if it was sweat or something deeper. There was no cheer, no feeling of victory, only this. Something that finally had a name, with a period at the end. I handed the paper to Lisa. She looked at it, then sat down, silent. You got what you wanted, she whispered. I never wanted to win, I said. I just want to walk through this door. As a father, not as someone living on the edge of it. Lisa didn't speak. After a while, she asked, if one day you start another family, will you still call Jacob your son? I didn't answer right away. I looked at her, at the eyes that were soft and scared, and waiting for something decent. I placed my hand on that piece of paper and pushed it back to her. No matter what happens after this, Jacob is the blood that once saved another blood. He's the first family I ever had, and I have never, and will never, walk away from something that saved me, Lisa cried, not sobbing, just quiet tears. Then she nodded. Then, I'll let Jacob know. That night, Jacob drew a picture. 3 people standing in the sun, a house, an apple tree, a bicycle. He showed it to me, pointing to each one. This is me, this is Mom, and this is Uncle Mark. But can I draw it again? I want to make Uncle Mark my dad. I looked up. Lisa stood behind him, eyes red, her hand resting on his shoulder. She nodded. I bent down and whispered, yeah, if you want, you can call me Dad. Jacob smiled. Then I'll call you Dad Mark, so I don't mix it up. I laughed. My voice cracked. Dad Mark sounds good to me. When he ran off to grab his crayons, I turned to Lisa. I once had a son, but I never heard him call me Dad. Lisa looked at me, her face tight with something unspoken. I went on. Back then, I stayed silent, and I lost my chance to be a father. But this time, when my blood ran into Jacob, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. That night, I stood at Jacob's door. I heard him reading, then the sound of a book closing. "Mom, is Dad Mark staying here tonight?" "Yes, honey. Dad's here." That answer was soft as a breeze. But to me, it was enough to fill 7 years of standing on the sidelines. I had been here for 7 years. No title, no name called, and yet, with one innocent question, one nod, and one transfusion no one else could give, I knew I was no longer Uncle Mark. I was Dad Mark, and for the first time, I was called by the name that was always mine. 3 weeks after the day Jacob first called me Dad Mark, a letter came, thick, cold. On the envelope, in bold letters, "Notice of custodial dispute. Request for evaluation." I tore it open. My eyes moved fast across the page, but my chest slowed down. The sender, Gregory Turner, Lisa's ex-boyfriend, the man I thought had been long gone from her life. And from the boys, he was demanding a review of paternity, requesting a new DNA test. His reason: there are irregularities in the current results. I believe the woman lied in order to cut me out of my son's life. I just sat there, eyes fixed on the paper, heart sliding out of rhythm. I used to think that giving blood to a boy who was dying, that should have been proof enough that I was his father. Turns out, in the real world, blood isn't enough. People believe paper and the words of a man who once walked away. That night, I showed Lisa the letter. Her face went pale, her voice barely air. I didn't know he would do this. He just called when he heard Jacob was in the hospital. I told him to stay out of it. Did you tell him that Jacob isn't his? She lowered her head. I couldn't. I thought he'd figure it out himself. I was scared to stir that hornet's nest. I clenched my teeth. You were scared, so you let him think he has a claim. And now me, the man who bled for your son, has to fight in court just to keep being called Dad. Lisa broke down. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I never thought he'd actually sue. I stared at her. My voice was low, tight. What did Gregory say to you in that call? Through tears, she whispered. He said, if Jacob turns out to be his son, he'll take him back. He'll take him away. And he won't let me, or that man, ruin his kid. The room felt hollow, like all the air had been pulled out. I looked around. The kitchen where I'd cooked for Jacob. The chair where I read him stories. The wall covered in his drawings that he once called me over to see. All of it, now hanging by a thread. All of it, threatened by a man who wasn't there. When Jacob burned with fever, wasn't there when he cried out for Dad Mark. I sat down, pressed my palms against my temples. I could feel my heart beating, not out of anger, but out of fear. Fear of losing all over again. I'd already lost one son because I didn't fight hard enough. This time, even after giving my blood, it could still be taken away from me. Not by death, but by a single piece of paper. I don't know what hurts more, to be stripped of being a father, or to realize that all this time, no one has ever stood up to protect me. As a father, the hearing was held on a damp, gray morning. I remember it well. The cold wind, and my hands, cold not from weather, but from fear. Gregory walked in with his lawyer. Expensive suit, confident face, and those eyes, looking at me like I didn't belong in the same room. When he spoke, his voice was firm, polished. I lived with the boy's mother. I believed that child was mine. No one has the right to erase me with a single, questionable test. I stood up, spoke as calmly as I could. I presented the DNA report, the doctor's confirmation, the proof that I was the one who gave blood to save Jacob's life. Gregory glanced at me and smirked. So you gave blood. That doesn't make you a father. Being a father means being there, taking responsibility. You came late to the game. My hands clenched on the table. He wasn't wrong about one thing, but he left out the truth. He had been gone for 7 years. Lisa's hands were shaking, her eyes red. She barely said a word. And I knew, if this kept going, Gregory would drag all 3 of us into a bottomless legal pit. In that tense room, I lowered my head, closed my eyes, and in my mind, I saw Jacob burning with fever, that tiny cold hand. Me, sitting there, blood flowing from my arm to his. No one asked me to. No one made me. I did it because, in every drop, I knew he was my son. But now, here I was, in a courtroom, where fatherhood is decided by arguments, documents, and lawyers. I could fight. I could even win. But what would Jacob learn from that? That being a father is about fighting, about taking, or that being a father sometimes means stepping back, so your child can step forward in peace. I opened my eyes, lifted my head. I withdraw my counterclaim, I said. Gregory turned to me, startled. Lisa froze. I went on. I don't need a piece of paper to tell me who I am. All I need is to be the one Jacob reaches for. When he's sick, when he falls, when he's scared. If the court needs a name on a file, give it to Gregory. I'll keep the heart. The court recorded my statement. The hearing ended. Gregory said nothing else. Lisa held my hand so tightly as we walked out. That night, I sat on the porch. Jacob came out, climbed onto my lap. Dad, Mark, did a stranger come to our house today? I ran my hand over his hair. No, just the wind. But I'm here now. I used to think giving him my blood was enough to make me a father. Now I know. Sometimes being a father is having the strength to step back. So nothing, and no one, can take away your child's peace. As long as Jacob calls me Dad, I'll be here. Not because of paper, not because of rights, but because of love and patience. After the hearing, Gregory didn't take the case any further, but he didn't disappear either. He started showing up at Jacob's school, sending gifts to the house, calling Lisa, not too often, but just enough to make everything heavy. One day, Jacob's teacher asked Lisa, "Was that Jacob's biological father?" Waiting outside the school gate. Lisa froze. And Jacob? He started asking questions that weren't easy to answer. Dad, Mark, how come that man also says he's my dad? I looked at him, tried to smile. There are people who say they're a dad, and there are people who just do it, every day, without having to say it. Lisa and I talked. For the first time, no blaming. Just two people looking in the same direction, toward a little boy. I said, if I stay away for a while, maybe things will calm down. She stayed quiet for a long time. I don't want you to go, but if that's what it takes for Jacob to be at peace, I understand. So I moved back to my old apartment. Every morning, I still made 2 cups of coffee, like I used to when I lived with Lisa and Jacob. One I drank. The other I left there, let it go cold, and poured it out. Not because I forgot, because I wanted to remember. Every night, I played a recording of Jacob singing Happy Birthday at last year's party. His voice cracked, pitched too high. Then he laughed so hard when the cake tilted. I don't need the recording, but I need that laugh to fall asleep. On weekends, I see Jacob. He hugs me like he's afraid I'll disappear. Dad, Mark, I made a new drawing. Look, on the paper, a man in a red cape flying through the sky, holding a laughing boy. I asked, who's the superhero? He said, it's you, of course. I don't get to be there with him every night, but I've started writing every memory of him in a small notebook. I write down every time he wrinkles his nose, every food he likes, every joke that makes him laugh. Not to keep it to myself, but for the day when he asks, why weren't you there? I'll hand him the notebook and say, I was there. I just stood behind you, so you wouldn't see the scary things in front. I don't know what Gregory will do tomorrow, but I know this. Every page I write is a quiet whisper that love doesn't have to be close. To stay, Saturday morning, I still made 2 cups of coffee, like always. One for me, one left to cool. The doorbell rang. I opened it. Jacob, blue hoodie, a backpack half his size, eyes bright. Lisa stood behind him, tired face, but softer than usual. I knelt down, looking at my son. So, which hero are you here to save today? Jacob grinned, pulled out a notebook from his backpack, covered in robot stickers. I made a book for you, because you write a lot about me. Now I want to write about you. I took it. On the very first page, in messy, uneven letters, Dad, Mark's journal. Dad isn't always near, but he's always in my heart. I looked up at Lisa. You? Let him come. She nodded. He said he wanted to spend the weekend at Dad Mark's house. Just one weekend. And some things shouldn't be stopped. I nodded. Didn't say a word. Just stepped aside. Opened the door wide. For 3 days, we did everything we used to do, like nothing had ever changed. homemade pizza, old cartoons, superhero books. Jacob lay flat on the sofa, waving his arms. Dad, do you remember the first time I called you Dad, Mark? I nodded. Yeah. You were wearing a t-shirt with a dinosaur on it. He laughed so bright. Then from now on, if someone asks, who's your dad? I'll say it's Dad, Mark. I froze. He sat up, face suddenly serious. Too serious for a 7-year-old. I know. You're not on the papers. But you're in me. I turned away quickly, hiding the burn in my eyes. And right there, I understood. Love doesn't need proof. It only needs the one who's loved. To know. Sunday night. He fell asleep early. I lay next to him, silent, listening to his soft breathing. And for the first time in years, my heart was beating. Without fear. Monday morning, I drove him back to Lisa's. He hugged me, long and tight. Then whispered, Dad, Mark, next time I'll put more stickers on. I'll cover the whole book. I smiled, bent down to him. Yeah, I'll keep every single one. Because that's how I know just how close I am to your heart. I stood there, watched them walk away. Early spring wind brushed past. Not cold anymore. I went inside, opened a drawer, took out the notebook I'd been writing for him, and placed it next to the one he just gave me. 2 books, different colors, different handwriting, but one thing the same. Both began with a love that never needed anyone's approval, only the chance to be real. I used to think love was about being there every day. Now I know, sometimes, one honest day can stay in someone's heart forever. I used to think being a father was a role, something you had to prove, to defend, to have your name printed in a box on some form of. And then one day, I was sitting by a bed, holding the hand of a feverish boy. He didn't even call my name. He just whispered, I knew you'd come. And I understood. Being a father isn't in the paperwork. It's in the fact that, when your child needs you, you show up. Jacob taught me something no one ever told me. Love doesn't need to be certified. It only needs to be felt. I don't live with my son anymore. I don't hear his laughter every night. But I still write, every day, in a small notebook, everything he likes, every smile, every moment that makes me feel like I matter. Not to keep, but so that one day, if he ever asks, where were you all those years? I can hand him the book and say, I was there, standing behind you, to block the sun, to shield the wind, and to wait for you to grow. People ask me, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you go to court to win your rights as a father? I just smile, because fatherhood isn't about fighting. Being a father means choosing to stay, not to win, not for gratitude, just to know that your quiet presence is helping a child grow up, safer. Kinder. One time Jacob asked, Dad, Mark, what if one day I grow up and I forget you? I stayed silent for a moment, then said, if that day comes, every time you choose kindness, every time you forgive instead of hurting, every time you love without trying to own, that's when I'll still be in you. He smiled, nodded. Then I'll never forget. I used to think love meant holding on tight. Now I know, real love sometimes means letting go, so the one you love can be at peace. 2 notebooks lie side by side on my table. One I wrote for him, one he gave to me. Different handwriting, different hands, but the same thing inside. Both written from a heart, unafraid of being forgotten. If you're watching this, maybe you've lost someone, a role, a place in someone's life. Maybe you've wondered, do I still matter? If I'm not there, I don't have an answer. Just a question, the same one I ask myself. Have you ever stayed in someone's life just by loving them quietly? If the answer is yes, then you're not invisible. You're just standing somewhere where the light hasn't reached yet, but their heart can still feel the warmth of you. Every single day, love doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to win. It only needs to be real. And when it's real, no one can erase you from someone's memory. If you're tired of proving your worth, if you've ever thought you don't have the title to stay, know this. Sometimes, just being there is enough.